Welcome guys to this new opening video on the 4-night game. We are going to be reviewing two games from top players to get to know this opening a bit better. And of course I'll try to give you some tips on how to play this opening with both colors. The first game we are going to review is a game between Joseph Gallagher, a Grandmaster, versus Lawrence Cooper. Slightly lower rated player, this Lawrence Cooper. 2352 is was his rating at the moment this game was played, but two very strong players, absolutely. And if you're wondering what the 4-nights game is, we can just review the first opening moves. E4, E5. This is the open game. White develops his knight to f3. Black responds in kind, just protecting this central pawn. And now, as we can see, both players developing their knights. We have the 4-nights game here, and of course the opening can take many turns from here. There are many different moves White can play. You can play d4 and enter a sort of open 4-nights game, possibly transposing to the Scotch game as well. You can go for bishop b5 or even bishop c4, keeping the game more closed. There are also some other moves that have been played by strong players, but these are the most popular choices for White. And of course Black has several different options at his or her disposal to counter this. We can just follow this game. Bishop b5 was played by Gallagher, which is a very normal move. And now you might think that a move like a6 would be okay. I mean, we see this move being played in the Roy Lopez, for example, chasing the bishop away. But in this kind of position, White will probably at least consider taking on c6. Black can recapture, of course. And now take on e5 is a critical move if we are going to take on c6 in the first place. So knight takes e5, knight takes e4 is a trick that's well worth knowing for Black. Knight takes, and queen d5 attacking, as we can see, both knights. These are the computer suggestions in this position, and I'll just give you a brief moment to consider whether d3, queen e2 or short castles is the right move for White. If you're struggling to decide, think logically. We have developed a couple of pieces. We can't save both of these knights anyway, so why not just castle, get our king to safety. And remember that if queen takes e4, then rook e1 follows, and we have this deadly X-ray attack against the Black king. This is not possible for Black, so queen takes e5, and now still rook e1, and White is better because White is enjoying a massive lead in development. So this is not recommendable for Black. So instead of a6, which is a bit tame and not really necessary to provoke White to take on c6, Black should develop. Bishop c5 is a fine move that can also be played. We will review bishop b4 in the next game between Michael Adams and Viktor Korchnoi, two top players. So bishop c5 is of course also possible. Knight d4 is a very theoretical move. It is can turn out very sharp. Especially if White decides to, for example, grab this pawn on e5 or retreat with the bishop to a4 or c4. Those options can become quite sharp and quite difficult to handle if you're not well versed in the theoretical landscape of this opening. But I can just mention very briefly, knight takes d4 is a very peaceful option for White, and then e5, and in this position, queen f6, queen e2, and queen e7, d c3, and exchange of queens, followed by probably bishop c5, d6, and this position is very equal. You can of course play this out. There's lots of play left, lots of pieces, but the pawn structure is quite symmetrical. This double pawn doesn't really trouble white too much, at least not at the moment, and materially it's dead equal. So this is very peaceful stuff if you are inclined to play such chess on a given day, but knight d4 usually turns out more sharp than this. I'm not going to review this because this is too demanding from a theoretical point of view, but bishop d6 is a move I really like and will take some time to explain. The rationale behind this move is that if white takes on c6 at some point, then dc6 will be very logical, and suddenly we can see that the bishop is perfectly placed on d6, protecting the central pawn, not really getting in the way of any other pieces, and still this bishop will be able to develop freely to e6, g4, and other squares as well. So bishop d6 is really just a move that kind of tries to be ahead of white's plans, because bishop b5 takes c6 is at some point a logical move for white will be considered. So bishop d6 is a natural response, even though it's currently blocking this d pawn. So we have to be careful. This bishop will need to be developed at some point. Castles and castles, always very nice to castle at least within 5, 6, 7 moves in the opening to get your king to safety. d3, and now h6 is a move played by black. So white just opened up for the black squared bishop going to g5, which would be a slightly annoying pin. Black stops this with h6. And now there are many plans for white in the position. Just something to note is that the classic plan of c3, d4 is not currently available for white because the knight is blocking this on c3. So Gallagher decides knight e2. Rerouting this knight to g3 would be logical. Now you might wonder, how do we activize our bishop on c8, currently blocked in by its own pieces? Well, the standard regrouping maneuver is rook e8, bishop f8, and then break with d5 or even just d6, and black will be doing okay. And this is also what Cooper played in the game. Knight g3, now a6, and dc6. Very logical to take with the d pawn. Usually we would like to capture towards the center, but this would not really help our bishop on c8, and the b file is not really fruitful for black at the moment. There are no targets there, and white can just play b3. So d takes c6 is more logical. And now the game continued. b3, bishop e6. You could have played many different moves here with black. I really like knight h7. To maybe reroute this knight to e6 and then d4, or maybe g6 even. I like this plan. It's a long way off, but there's not that much going on in the center at the moment. So if the center is closed, you have more time at your disposal to do such long maneuvers. So knight h7 just to improve this knight. Could also go to d7 of course, and then to f8. But this kind of regrouping with the knight is very standard in these kind of closed open game positions. Whilst white would of course like to play bishop b2, maybe even rook e1, but at least break with d4 at some point, because all of white pieces are kind of geared up towards that central break. So d3, d4 is definitely on the cards, and that's why black in many positions like this one plays c5 at some point to get a grip over this central square d4, which would also be logical in combination with a rerouting maneuver of the knight to e6 and then going to d4 with the knight. And if this knight is captured by any piece, then you would recapture with the c pawn to straighten out your pawn structure and enjoy the advantage of more space advantage in the center. So this was just a slight recap of this game. Gallagher won after successfully, I would say, breaking in the center. Black did not play c5. Maybe he should have done that, but still, this position was on the board, and even though black is enjoying the pair of bishops, we can see that this bishop is up for grabs at any point, and f2, f4 is coming for white. So suddenly we can see that white is enjoying a massive grip over the center and on the king side. And in combination with two very active knights and a strong bishop on b2, fianchetto bishop, this developed into a crucial kingside initiative and attack, which Gallagher exploited in brilliant style. So check out that game if you'd like. The next game I'll review is from the other side of the board. We will see this from Viktor Korchnой's perspective against Michael Adams. A real heavyweight game this. e4, e5, knight f3, still the same opening. Remember, we are reviewing the four knights game. Here it is, the standard opening position of this variation. So bishop b5 played yet again, which is the most usual move here. There are other moves for white as well, but this is very standard. And now instead of the slightly peculiar bishop d6, then bishop b4 was Korchnoj's move of choice. Castles. Very standard stuff to castle right away. As you may recall, I recommended in the previous game to get castles within 5, 6, 7 moves in the opening, just to cover your king and get the rook involved in the center as well. d3, d6. This is all looking very dry. It's very symmetrical, but now bishop g5 from white, and black can't really keep up this game of just doing the same moves as white, because at some point after, for example, knight d5, this will be very, very awkward for black. So for example, in this position, just rook e1 for example, and we have a a tricky position, absolutely. But here at some point this will be too tricky for black to handle, since you're a move down. Never a really good recipe just to copy your opponent. So this kind of style will be punished, and now f4 will give white a massive attack. So even though there are two bishops hanging on the other side of the board, this kind of copying game will not be to black's advantage, because you're always one move behind, a step behind your opponent. So don't do this. Korchnoj played knight e7, which is a very standard regrouping maneuver in these kind of pawn structures. The knight wasn't really doing much on c6 and would like to join his comrade on f6 on the king side. So you might be afraid of this bishop takes f6 move, inflicting a double pawn on your king side pawn structure here, but remember, you can tuck your king away in the corner with king h8 and follow up with, for example, rook g8 to play in the g file. You can also break with f5, or even just get your knight to g6 first and control the king side before breaking with f5. This is very solid for black, nothing to really be afraid of. And it's not worth giving up the bishop pair for white. So this is not something to fear immediately. Adams played knight h4, and after taking on c3, just inflicting a double pawn for Adams here, Korchnoj played knight g6. Now, after knight takes g6, this actually is a very important moment in the game. You could play hg, but then you will never be able to kick this bishop away, and you will still be a bit cramped with black. I mean, white still has the two bishops, the bishop pair, so Korchnoj decides to play fg6, open the f-file for the rook, even though this pawn structure is slightly more slightly less flexible than the other. This will give black more space and a very playable position after these moves. And the game ended in a draw. Adams played f4, could have played h6 here, Korchnoj, to provoke this bishop f6 move. He did play queen e8, which was slightly provoking, but still just fine after takes on e5, and with the plan bishop e6 to exchange up these bishops, black was doing just fine. I hope this was a satisfactory introduction to the four knights game that starts with these moves. It's a solid opening, can become quite tricky, quite tactical and sharp if you're not well prepared, but I hope this very short intro video will get you started with this opening.